and welcome to another episode of Hames Hot Mic, sponsored by Simpson Notaries. I promised my guest that I'd invite her on the show after things settle down following school district by-election held a while ago, and I'm excited to see how the board is performing with its new member, and pleased to welcome Willow Reichelt, the School District 33 Board Chair, after this break. My guest, Willow Reichelt, has a bachelor's degree in English and visual arts from the University of Victoria, and although she holds a teaching certificate, she's taking a break from the classroom to help with the governance of our school district. And it says on her Facebook bio that she'd like to also focus on her artwork, so I hope I get a chance to ask her about that. I know that Willow works tirelessly in a number of different ways with a number of different people in our community to help make Chilliwack a better place to live. So it's my pleasure to welcome the school board chair, Willow Reichelt. Welcome, Willow.
Thank you for having me, Clint.
Hey, you're very welcome. Listen, we just went through a by-election for a school trustee a little ways back. I got an opportunity to meet all those good folks and talk about issues, but I have to admit I felt a little bit frustrated because they didn't have the depth and background that I'm sure you have in some of those issues. So I'm really excited to get a chance to chat with you about those things. First question I have is, how's it going? You've got a brand new trustee. I haven't heard a peep on the news about the Chilliwack School Board, and I suspect you think that's a good thing, and so do I. So how's the new trustee fitting in? How's the board dealing with issues now? What's going on?
Yeah, it's been great to have a full board again. Dr. Bondar is fitting in as a new trustee. She's very enthusiastic. It's nice to have a fresh voice on the board, and things have been going well. We're focusing on the work of the board, which is really nice.
That's good. I didn't think enthusiasm was going to be a problem with that trustee. She is certainly very enthusiastic about the work she does, and she seems to be bringing that to the position of trustee as well. Look, the school board has embarked on a really ambitious building program that I can see. There's a whole bunch of new development that is coming down the pipe, and I wondered if you would take us through some of those projects, what they're going to mean to the school district and what they are. Let's start with one that I'm familiar with, and that's a new, looks like a new school over in the Garrison Crossing area, in the Vetter Crossing area. Tell us about that particular school.
So at the end of Tyson Road, we're having a new K-8 school. It's called Stitos Lalum Tatilt, and that means River Crossing Place of Learning, I believe is the correct translation of that. So it's going to be a regular K-8 school, so it's not like a school of choice or anything. It will be a catchment school, but the building is going to be unbelievable. It's so gorgeous because it's right on the river. It's got windows on the one side. It's going to be a location that's really prime for place-based learning because it has really good access to the river. It's going to be beautiful, and it's really going to help with our overcrowding issues in Chilliwack because it will have quite a number of school spaces, student spaces at it.
So K-8 would mean there'd be sort of an elementary and middle school piece to it, is that?
Yeah, so Rosedale is that model as well. So it just allows us to, instead of building two little teeny schools to deal with capacity, it's one school, so you're able to have elementary school kids and middle school kids in the same building, and so it helps you deal with space issues in two different levels. So the way the school is designed, it basically has the library in the middle, the learning commons, and then it'll have sort of one half of the school will have most of the teachers for the middle school side, and the other side will have most of the elementary, and then they share a gym and everything.
And what sort of capacity are we talking about in terms of?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot, Clint. I didn't look up my stats before. I think it's 900.
So that's actually quite a big school.
Yeah, I could be wrong about that though. It might be 7. It's somewhere.
Well, it's not 200, but
it's significantly quite a lot because it is an elementary middle that it has a big capacity. So.
And where's the catchment area going to be for that school?
Well, because it is a new school, it means that the catchments will be redrawn for Sardis. Yeah. So the whole Sardis area we'll have to take a look at. There'll be a consultation process like there was when GWG opened. when you create a new school, kids that would have gone to another school will suddenly go to that school, so everything will get rejigged. But
Everybody gets moved around.
Yeah, so I don't want to say what it is right now, because some people will be sad if they're in that school, some people will be sad if they're not. We don't want to get anyone's hopes up. But
I think it's interesting. Whenever there's a new school, people are excited about, oh, maybe I'll get to go there. Maybe my kids will get to go there. And that's, I can tell you anecdotally, a fact that I went to 80 Rundle the first year it was open. So it was kind of a neat experience to go into a brand new building with, and there were a lot of changes in the way education happened in those days. So it was a bit of an experimental school at the time.
Yeah.
And some of it worked extremely well, and some of it, I think hindsight would show that it didn't work all that well. But it was interesting for me to go to a brand new school. It was very interesting. And then, of course, that's high school for the first time. And then the culture shock of going to an old building like Chilliwack Senior, which was ramshackle when I went there in 1969. So, and it's just recently been replaced. So I couldn't imagine what it was like in just before it was replaced.
It definitely needed replacement. I mean, they had redone the whole entryway at one point, but the rest of the building was definitely had seen its better days. I TOC'd for years, so I did work in Chilliwack Senior, and it had a certain vibe that wasn't as nice as it is now. Now it's so beautiful, that building, honestly. You go in there, it's got this beautiful wood and lovely light, and it's really
from my perspective, I think when we build beautiful schools and beautiful places for kids to learn, it sends a real strong message about how much we value those kids and how much we value the learning process.
Yeah.
And so I'm not one of those people that says that should be 4 brick walls and wooden benches. What else do kids need? I really think there's a strong message being sent when kids walk up to a place and say, "Wow, this is for me. Yeah. I'm gonna respect the building, and I'm gonna respect what happens in here." That's kind of my philosophy. Hey, I should have run for the school board. Listen to me. So that elementary, middle school in the Vedder Crossing area, on what was the old military base. In fact, I happen to know, because I was involved in some of the redevelopment over there, that little parcel of property was a real challenge to develop because it was so close to the river, and a school became the ideal development to go on there. So I'm really happy that was able to
It
get
is kind of a funny shaped lot, even for building a school. They had to do creative things in order to get the right number of parking spaces and stuff. They have done, from my memory, when we had the presentation, there is one area that's like a basketball court and overflow parking. So like most of the time it'll be able to be used for kids at the play area, but then for Christmas concert night or whatever, when there needs extra parking, they'll be able to use that. So
it was a bit of a shoehorn to get everything to fit in there, but if you're getting 700 or 900 students on there, that's really good news. Good news for the neighborhood and good news for the area over there as well. So what else is what other schools are in planning or in process at this point in time?
Well, the ground's already been broken for the addition to Vedder Elementary. So that is a whole bunch of new classrooms plus some multi-purpose space, which is really good. Hopefully there won't be portables at that school, at least for a little while. We do have so much building going on in Chilliwack that honestly the idea of actually getting rid of all our portables anytime soon is not that likely, but at least if we can stop buying more portables would be great, and a reduction would certainly be great. So the new addition at Vedder Elementary is going to be really nice, actually. There's more bathrooms being built there as well. And
will it increase the actual student capacity at the school, the
No,
addition?
it's just to deal with, they have a lot of portables at Vedder. Yeah. So it's mostly to deal with the kids who are already there, but giving them permanent classroom spaces.
But giving them permanent classroom space. But it's not just activity space, it's actual classroom space that's being built there.
Either 8 or 10 classrooms. Oh man, I should have written all of this out. I didn't know quite what you were going to be asking me, but yeah, it's quite a few classrooms, and then also some multi-purpose spaces and washrooms, like I said.
Well, the development in that area, which is going on the Chiatkin lands, is impressive and unbelievable, the scope, and I've got a feeling, as you say, that it's going to put pressure on, that's going to put even more pressure on schools in that particular area as well.
Yeah, one thing that to realize about Chilliwack is a lot of our land in Chilliwack is on the ALR. Yeah. And so it's actually quite difficult for us to find property where a school can even be built that isn't on the ALR. So it's a bit of a challenge to find. You need quite a number of acres in order to have the capacity to build a school. It kind of needs to be flat, but then all of our flat land is ALR land.
Yeah.
And so it is definitely a struggle, but we're always on the lookout. We ideally would like to build an elementary school, like to fit the kids from Eastern Hillsides eventually, but so far we haven't found land for that. It's on our capital list of things to do, but
I'm familiar with that problem, and I can tell you when I was at City Hall, I know that was a constant struggle that we had about how to find those properties, because the other challenge you have is you have to kind of wait for funding from the province.
Yeah.
And that funding usually comes when the need is very is right there. So you're not able to kind of say, well, let's plan for 20 years from now. Let's start accumulating property. So
and the province doesn't give you, like, even if a new school is approved, you only get funding for the number of kids that are there, not for the number of kids you might one day have when it opens. So often you get something approved. By the time it's built, you're already over capacity because more kids have moved in, right? I mean, it makes sort of sense because some districts aren't growing and they don't want to build this big empty school, right? But obviously here we're looking at probably growth for decades still.
The growth is pretty remarkable. One of my recent guests was the mayor of Abbotsford and a mayoralty hopeful in the District of Mission, and they're seeing unprecedented growth in those communities as well as Chilliwack. I think that Chilliwack's is even a little higher than those areas. So that's Vetter Elementary, which is going to serve again the south side of the community. What's anything else happening on the north side that is going to be making a difference?
Well, we have Imagine High opening next year.
Why don't you talk about that? I asked questions of trustees, hopefuls about Imagine High, and they had a pretty good sense that it was going on, but I'd really love to get your in-depth description of what's going on with Imagine High, what it is, and I have to confess I'm pretty darn excited about it because it kind of fits in a category of school that I think is just so exciting and so needed.
Honestly, Imagine High kind of makes me wish I hadn't quit teaching. It's so amazing because I was an art teacher, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's an integrated art and technology school. So it's not a fine art school. So the concept behind Imagine High is that it's going to be project-based learning. So instead of a kid just doing social studies and not that teachers are doing this anyways, but not doing a bunch of worksheets on social studies, they'll do like a project that brings in technology or brings the arts into their project. There'll be a lot of integration of the different subjects into things with kids doing really in-depth, imaginative and creative work. So I think it's going to be really, really, really cool. There isn't going to be like portfolio or anything for kids to get in. It's not going to be talent-based. If kids have an interest in that kind of learning, they can go to Imagine High. So they don't have to be someone who everyone says is this amazing artist. As long as they're willing to try and they're really have a passion for that kind of learning, that's the school for them. So I think it'll be really good for kids that maybe traditional schooling isn't quite grabbing the interest of, or, maybe that real just traditional book learning is a bit of a struggle for, that they'll be able to show their learning in lots of interesting and creative ways.
So, and it also is not just about the arts, as you say, it's about how technology is integrated into learning and how the arts, you can integrate those things together. So, and as I understand it, in the form of projects, so that a project might be initially arts-based, but the learner will have to figure out how to integrate, or how technology integrates into that project, how the arts integrate into that project. And at the end of the day, a project has to be delivered that shows how those things interface. Am I getting it close?
Yeah, so we had a presentation and someone showed us like an example of a student project from another district that was a multimedia presentation that was all about, I don't remember the subject honestly, but say you were doing social studies, you might do a project that was about World War I, but instead of just writing an essay, you might do it with some artwork that you incorporated into a slideshow or did a video to go with it, or yeah, we'll be doing media. There's also the kitchen there, so there's
Yes.
culinary arts. There's going to just be a focus on that kind of thing. So instead of just giving kids content and having them like do tests and stuff.
Write a test on whether or not they know it.
I mean, to be honest, Imagine High is going to have this as a very direct focus, but that is the way education is going in general. There's a real move away from just regurgitating information and more into synthesizing and creating. So.
Well, I had a chance some time ago to provide a little bit of input into the theater aspects of the high school, and spoke with the new principal, and she used a wonderful analogy, and she said, "Imagine if the project was a fashion show."
Yeah.
And which I thought, oh, well, that's pretty simple. She says, but let's say that project is a post-apocalyptic fashion show where the people showing the fashions are zombies.
Yeah.
And so now we bring in aspects of science, what kind of things could cause an apocalypse in our world? What impact might something like global warming have to create some kind of apocalypse?
Yeah.
What are the pathogens that might be in so the research that would have to go into then generating fashions that would make sense within the context of something post-apocalyptic.
Exactly.
Give kids an opportunity to really delve into something that, my old brain might just sort of say, oh, a fashion show, that's interesting. There's fashion design. But it's more than that, because you throw those other factors into it, and it creates a really in-depth project for a kid. And I can't think of a better way for kids to learn.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't remember. I have no memory of any test I ever wrote in school, but I do remember, like, in my grade 7 class, we had to do a project for Egypt where we had to make something. Like, it had to be a physical thing and then do a report on it. And I made like a mummy sarcophagus, and I had that till it broke a number of years ago. It sort of crumbled, but I did have it for a long time. That certainly stuck in my head more.
Well, of course, grade 7 was the Egypt and Greece. I remember that about grade 7, and that was it was as you say, it was one of my most favorite times in school, because you got into that. There was that whole creative learning about things that were very cool. Willow, we're going to just take a quick break here. I'll be back with the School District Board Chair, Willow Reichelt, after this quick break. We're back with Willow Reichelt. Willow, it's been great talking about these new schools, because there was a time that I can remember when getting investment in Chilliwack schools was very challenging. We didn't have a lot of new building in the community for a long, long time. And then it seems with the Chilliwack Senior Secondary School redevelopment, G.W. Graham, and now some of the projects that you're talking about, we're on the radar. The good news is we're getting new schools. The challenge is, of course, we're growing like crazy, and that's going to be a challenge. One of the things that does is puts financial pressure on the school board. I was reading news articles saying the budget is getting more and more challenging. Where are we at with that at this point in time?
Yeah, like we haven't had the public budget presentation, so I can't go into super detail about it. But the main pressure that's on the district is the fact that there hasn't really been any kind of like cost of living increase to the transfers from the province for a number of years. So, there's a per student funding that we get, and that's not been increasing. So when stuff like our, energy bill goes up, that just comes out of the operating budget. There was some like automatic increases to benefits that happen. That just comes out of the operating budget. There's, we do get funding when a union signs a contract and then they have a raise. We do get funding for that. It doesn't always cover all of it, even though it's sort of supposed to. But there are other pressures. There was some stuff with MSP that caused some issues with our budget. So all of those things have just compounded to the point where we do have. Well, we're not going to have a deficit because we're required to do a balanced budget, but it has put pressure on the budget for sure. So we are going to have to make some tough decisions, but I think our secretary treasurer and assistant secretary treasurer have been working really hard to make sure that they're not things that will be really, really hard on the schools. They're,
Yeah.
everyone's going to have to be tightening their belt, as they say, but not in a way that should be super detrimental. If we were to get more enrollment than we are projecting, it would help the budget. But we always do that conservatively so
Yes.
that
Yeah.
you don't project for a huge enrollment and then be wrong and then have to make cuts later. So
And people might not realize this, but in a local government, a city government, of course, they generate their own tax revenues based on, housing values and property values. School boards don't get to do that. They are essentially stuck with a formula. School boards don't have the ability to say, okay, we need to raise taxes to pay for the things we need. That money comes directly from Victoria, and you get what you get, and you have to manage within that. And school boards that don't balance their budget usually run afoul of the province, and I think there's been occasions when they've in fact been dismissed for.
yeah, it's
for
one
not
of the
doing so.
ways. One of the reasons a board can't actually get dismissed is for not passing a balanced budget. So you have to do it.
Well, I'm glad that that is underway and look forward to seeing any public information that comes out of that process. I know your Secretary Treasurer, just before the by-election, had talked about the challenges the board was facing, and it's good to know that there's good people there working on that.
Yeah, the public budget presentation will be at one of our April meetings. So I don't remember the date off the top of my head, but if you check on the district website, that should be.
Thanks for that. Now, there was, I don't really want to go back to this period of time, but, a few months ago, the school board was in the news for some of the reasons you don't want to be in the news for. And the provincial government responded to some of those challenges with a review. My understanding from you is that review's been completed. Any idea when you'll know what that review will show?
So the special advisors were in the district for a couple months doing interviews, watching our meetings, and they submitted a report to the minister on February 26th.
Yeah.
We haven't heard anything at all, like not anything other than that it was submitted. So at some point, the minister is going to tell us what direction she's taking given the recommendations that the special advisors made. I don't have any information at all on that.
And this is a new Minister of Education.
Yes.
Have you, as a board, had an opportunity to meet with the new minister yet, or is that something that will be?
I've talked to her on the phone. I've also seen her at BCSTA events. I don't know if ministers usually do talk to individual boards. Honestly, the previous minister.
I meant board, I meant board chair, of course.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
So
I did speak to her once. But I haven't spoken to her since, and I don't expect to be individually contacted at all in the future. I think that we'll get a letter or some sort of announcement will be made after she reads the report.
And I guess one of the things that has happened more recently is that the province has announced that teachers will be on the list of kind of special folks who are going to get access to, I believe it's the AstraZeneca vaccine. At the time this airs, that may have already happened, but do you have a sense of when that might happen and how happy you might be about that?
Well, we're very happy, obviously. It's great to have our staff protected. It won't just be teachers, it'll be school-based staff, so and possibly all district staff. I'm not sure exactly what the plan is for that, but for sure EAs and everyone who works in the school will be considered on that list. So it's really good. I mean, people have been, there's been some stress. Our schools are quite safe. There hasn't been in-school transmission of any scale at all, but still the anxiety is certainly there. And the more people in BC get vaccinated, the better. The pandemic will be over, the sooner everyone can get vaccinated. So I'm really excited about the fact that we're going to be able to offer this to people. In Surrey, they've already started vaccinating. We haven't gotten our notice of when they'll be starting here yet. They've already started in Surrey now. The original announcement was for it to start in April, so I think Surrey got a little bit ahead because their numbers are higher for COVID. Yeah. So, but I'm expecting hopefully sometime right after spring break we'll get notified, and then we'll be telling our staff when they can come in and get their vaccine. That's
absolutely great news, and you're right. Surrey has been a bit of a challenge, I think. In all aspects, not just the schools, in terms of COVID. So I'm delighted.
One important thing to keep in mind is that any kind of COVID in school is mirroring what's happening in the community. It's not generating outbreaks. So Surrey has high numbers in the community. They've got higher numbers in their school. We have slightly lower numbers in our community. We have lower numbers in school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think there's a fairly positive sense around Chilliwack that the numbers are manageable, and I certainly am not hearing anything different. And I do think that our schools are pretty safe places, and that the school district as a whole, under your leadership, is to be commended for the work that they're doing, because it's simply not an issue. So that means you're doing a whole lot of good things. So
I mean, honestly, our staff is fantastic in Chilliwack. I just admire everybody. Our custodial staff who's doing all the extra cleaning, our teachers, our EAs, everybody who works in our district is just really great. So thank you to everybody. I know it's been a rough year, but you're very much appreciated.
Well, and on behalf of the community, thank you, because I don't think we've got a more important resource than our kids. So the work that you're doing is on behalf of all of us. So as a grateful member of that community, thanks, Willow, for all of that wonderful stuff that you're doing. Before we go, you were an art teacher, and you talked about, as I said in your Facebook, now it gives me a chance to get back to my art. Tell me about the kind of art that you're producing, and what are you doing?
Sadly, well, not sadly, but I did write that when I first quit teaching, and then I got into politics. So I've accepted my fate that art is a hobby for me, which is fine. So I do a lot of different things. I'm really into fiber type art, so I do like embroidery and knitting. I also do. I have a spoonflower shop where I sell my fabric designs, so that's cool. I've designed T-shirts. I came on here once and talked about More Chill Less Whack, where I designed that for charity. So I do just a little bit of everything. I like to draw. I like to just make stuff. I do paper mache. But yeah, I dabble.
And I think one of your sons is very talented, as I recall seeing something on Facebook.
Well, both of my sons actually are very creative, but my younger son is the one who's gotten into crochet. So I taught him how to crochet, and so we crochet together, and he's been making they're called amigurumis, so little crocheted
I've
animals.
seen this, and I couldn't begin to tell you how to even start being that creative with something like that, but it's amazing to see that. And so I just wanted to, I'm very impressed. If you taught him, then clearly you're a pretty good teacher, because gosh, I'm not sure I'd have the capacity to actually learn that stuff.
Yeah.
Willow, it's been great chatting with you, as always. I'm so pleased with the direction our school board is headed in under your leadership. We have safe schools, which is really important at this time. We seem to have lots of other building and things going on, and I know in a position of governance, those things don't just happen. They happen because we have committed people there. So on behalf again of the community, thanks so much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Hey, my guest today was, of course, Willow Reichelt, the chair of the Chilliwack School Board. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to her, and thanks to you for watching the show. We're always anxious to hear from viewers on what we've presented or things you'd like to see us present. So feel free to contact us by email. Until next time, thanks for watching Hames Hot Mic.
Beep, 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 beep.